The forest was quiet, almost unnaturally so, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Fog rolled low across the narrow path, wrapping my legs in cold dampness, while a faint pale light flickered between the trunks. Somewhere far off, a branch snapped, and I thought I heard a soft static hum in the distance, almost like a voice calling my name. My breath came in slow, shallow whispers, and I kept moving, though every instinct screamed to stop. The deeper I walked, the more the silence grew, thick and heavy, pressing against my ears, until I could almost feel it watching me. Then, just as I thought I might find my way back, a shape shifted in the shadows, too tall, too still. That's when I saw it. The forest was never meant to be this quiet. Even the air felt heavy, damp, thick, and watching. I remember stepping off the main road when the mist began to rise. Just a few steps, I told myself, just to see where the trail led. The lantern in my hand trembled. Its flame bent sideways, caught in a wind that didn't exist. The trees leaned close, their branches slick with moisture, dripping like slow rain. The ground was soft, too soft. Each step sank deeper than I expected. A squelch, then silence, like the earth swallowed the sound whole. Fog curled around my boots. It moved as if it were alive. Sometimes I thought I saw a shape in it, a figure, a shoulder, the edge of a face, but when I blinked, it melted back into gray. The trail should have been straight. I knew it was straight. But when I turned to look behind me, the path curved into the fog, twisting in a direction I didn't remember. A small breath escaped me. It was the only noise. Even the insects had gone still. I kept walking, because stopping felt worse. The lantern flickered again, a pale light that licked across gnarled roots and stones, stretching my shadow until it broke across the trees. Each time the light dimmed, the forest seemed to lean closer, like it was listening. I tried to steady my breath, slow, quiet, careful. But the silence pressed harder with every exhale. A whisper floated past me, faint, thin as spider silk. It brushed the back of my neck warm against the cold. I froze. The whisper came again, this time from somewhere to my right, just beneath the hum of the fog. Not words, not really, just the rhythm of speech, like someone trying to remember how to talk. My lantern hissed. The flame stretched tall, then shrank. The glass fogged from the inside, and I could see my reflection, blurred, pale, eyes wider than I remembered. I thought about turning back. I even took a step, but when I looked behind me, the trail was gone. Only fog. Thick, milky, endless. It wasn't just hiding the path. It had replaced it. Something dripped from the branches above, slow, steady, like clock ticks. The smell of damp wood and rot wrapped around me. I told myself to breathe, but the air tasted old, like it hadn't moved in years. I pressed forward. One step, then another. The forest no longer looked the same. The roots twisted into shapes that didn't belong to trees. And in the distance, I thought I saw a light. Small, pale, flickering, like another lantern. My heart rose, but only a little. Maybe someone else was here. Maybe the trail led back to the road. I followed it, slowly, carefully. The light ahead pulsed, sometimes bright, sometimes faint, until I realized it was matching my own, flicker for flicker, as if it were breathing with me. I stopped walking, and the other light stopped too. My throat felt dry. The fog swirled between us, thick, restless. I lifted my lantern, and the other lifted too. No, not lifted. Moved. Like a mirror. Like someone was holding it from the other side of the mist. I whispered, "Hello?" The word barely made a sound. It dissolved into the fog before reaching anything. The reflection tilted, slightly. A soft motion, curious, almost human. My fingers tightened around the handle of my lantern. Its metal was warm now, almost hot. The flame inside fluttered faster. The fog around my feet began to spin in small circles. Then, the whisper again. Close. So close it seemed to bloom right beside my ear. A breath. A syllable. Gone. I turned sharply, but there was nothing. Only branches. Reaching. Still. When I looked forward again, the other light had vanished. Just gray. Infinite gray. The trail beneath me began to narrow, edges bleeding into the fog. Roots slid under the surface, disappearing like veins. I felt the weight of the forest pressing in, softly, slowly, like it was thinking. I wanted to keep moving, but every direction looked the same. Every step led deeper into something that wasn't meant to be found. The lantern burned lower, its flame now small, trembling. Each time it flickered, I saw flashes, a hand on bark, a pale face turned toward me, eyes open, unblinking. But maybe that was just the fog. Maybe it was just me. The trail curved once more. I followed it, because there was nowhere else to go. And though the whisper never came again, I could still feel it, hovering in the air, waiting for the flame to die. The forest was quiet, too quiet. And somewhere in that silence, something waited for me to listen. The fog never left that night. It clung to the trees like something alive, curling around every branch, every shadow. The trail widened into a clearing. That's when I saw it. A campsite, long abandoned. The tent had collapsed in on itself. One corner lifted and fell with the slow breath of the wind. Its fabric was torn, edges stiff with dew and dirt. The campfire was a ring of gray stones, cold, silent, filled with nothing but ash and the faint smell of something once burnt. I stepped closer. The air was colder here, as if the forest had drawn a circle around this place and refused to let warmth inside. A kettle lay beside the fire pit, half buried in leaves. When I nudged it, it tipped over, spilling a single drop of blackened water. There was a chair, too, folding, crooked, leaning toward the tent like it wanted to listen. Then I saw the journal. It was open. Pages curled from moisture, ink bled across the paper in uneven waves. The handwriting trembled, as though written by someone whose hands wouldn't stop shaking. I knelt. The first line was still legible. It's still watching, even when I close my eyes. The next page was filled with smudges, marks that might have been words or frantic scratches meant to cover them. I traced the page with my fingertip. It was cold, colder than the air. Behind me, a crunch, soft, like someone stepping on damp leaves. I turned. Nothing, only the fog, shifting in slow circles. I waited, listening. There, again, closer. Another step, and then stillness. I could feel my pulse in my throat, a faint vibration in the silence. I whispered into the air, "Hello?" The word barely escaped. It dissolved in the mist like breath on glass. No answer. But something moved at the edge of the clearing. A shape, or maybe just a shadow stretched thin between the trees. The lantern's flame flickered. The air grew heavy. Even the fog seemed to hum, low, deep, beneath everything else. I took a step backward, and the shadow shifted. It lengthened across the ground, spilling toward the tent, then toward me. I froze. The light wavered again, and the shadow vanished, as if it had never been there. I turned back to the journal. Its pages had turned on their own. A new line waited near the bottom, written smaller, darker. "If you find this, don't look behind you." The wind rose. The tent fabric rustled, then fell still again. Something brushed my shoulder, a light touch, almost polite. I spun around. Empty space. Only fog, dense and unmoving. My lantern guttered. The shadows grew longer again, unnaturally long. They stretched away from me, but not in the same direction as the light. They bent, curved, pulled toward the woods, like they were being dragged. The trees beyond the clearing seemed taller now, their bark darker, their roots breathing. The footsteps returned, soft, steady, circling. Not rushing, not hiding, just circling. I didn't dare move. The fog began to shift with them like fabric tugged by unseen hands. Every sound felt close. Too close. Then, silence again. The kind that presses against your ears until you start hearing your own heartbeat. Until it feels like something else is breathing with you. I stared into the gray, trying to find edges, movement, anything. But the fog only stared back. The journal slipped from my hand. When it hit the ground, it fell open to another page. This one was empty, except for a single line at the very bottom. It waits for the light to fade. My lantern dimmed. The flame inside shivered like a trapped insect. I lifted it, but the glass was too hot to touch. The shadows stretched again, long, reaching, crossing each other, until the clearing became a net of black lines. And just at the far edge beyond the light, I thought I saw something standing still, tall, thin, watching. The flame trembled once, twice, then steadied, barely. I blinked, and the figure was gone. The forest held its breath. Even the fog seemed to stop moving. I picked up the journal and closed it. The pages felt damp, as if someone had been holding it only moments before. I backed away from the tent, step by slow step. The shadows stayed stretched across the clearing, anchored to nothing. I didn't look back again. I couldn't. The silence followed me down the trail. So did the feeling that something was standing in the mist, just beyond where the lantern could reach, waiting for me to listen. The forest hasn't changed, but it feels different now. The air is thicker, colder, like the fog learned my name. I move slower than before. Each step presses into damp soil, leaves sticking to my boots. The lantern's pale glow sways with my breath. Its light catches the mist, small particles floating, almost alive. Somewhere behind me something rustles. Not loud. Just enough to make me stop. The trees stand in tight clusters, bark slick with moisture, branches woven together like ribs. For a long moment, nothing moves. Then, at again, a rustle deeper in the tree line. I turn the lantern slightly. The fog parts, slow and reluctant. And that's when I see them. Two small points of light. Not reflections. Not fireflies. Eyes. They hover between the trunks. Motionless. Wide. Pale. They don't blink. They don't hide. They just stare. My breath catches in my throat. The air feels too thin. The forest too quiet. I take a single step forward. The lantern trembles in my hand. The eyes do not move. They only seem to focus. And then I blink. They're gone. The fog closes in again, as if nothing had been there at all. I stand there for too long, listening, waiting for the forest to exhale, but it doesn't. The silence stretches until it starts to feel heavy. A low hum behind my ears. I try to tell myself it was nothing, an animal. Light playing tricks. But deep down, I know the forest has changed. I start walking again. Slow, careful. Every footstep echoes. Soft. Then distant, as if the ground is hollow beneath me. The rhythm of my own steps begins to sound wrong. Like something else is walking a heartbeat behind me, I stop. The echo stops too. I breathe out, and the forest breathes in. The air moves around me, curling against my sleeves, my neck. Branches creak, one after another, like the trees are leaning closer. The fog tightens. I can't see more than a few feet ahead now. The pale light spills out in a trembling circle, edges swallowed by gray. I keep moving forward. I don't know why. Maybe because standing still feels worse. The rustling returns, this time to my left. Then again, behind me, soft, measured. Not the wind, not an animal, something aware. I glance between the trees. Each shadow looks longer than it should. They stretch across the ground like cracks, thin, endless. I whisper, "Is someone there?" The sound doesn't carry. It folds back into the fog. Another rustle. Closer now. I turn the lantern sharply, but all I see is movement. The kind that's already gone before you know where to look. My heartbeat feels too loud, too slow. Each thud shaking the light in my hand, I take another step, then another. The path beneath me feels uneven, as if the forest floor is breathing. My reflection flickers in the lantern glass. Pale, unfamiliar. The glow makes my eyes look too bright, too still. Something shifts behind the trees. I see the faint outline again. Those same glowing eyes. Farther now, but watching. I can't tell if they're higher than before or if the ground beneath me is sinking. I blink. They vanish again. This time, the silence that follows feels heavier. Like the forest is waiting for something. The fog moves differently now. Pulsing. Rhythmic. Like it's breathing around me, every tree looks the same. Every direction feels wrong. The light begins to fade at the edges, the flame shrinking until it's little more than a pulse. I whisper to myself, "Keep walking." The words come out broken. Almost a breath. The ground softens again, wet leaves giving way beneath my boots. The smell of soil, of old water, of something that's been here too long. Another rustle. Right beside me, I spin. Nothing. Just fog. And stillness. But now I can feel it. That weight between the trees. Eyes that don't blink. Patience that doesn't end. The forest isn't just alive. It's aware. It's listening. I stand there until the flame flickers once more. And in that faint, final shimmer of light, I think I see movement, tall shapes between the trunks. Leaning forward, watching, the lantern dims. The forest exhales, and I realize I am the only thing still moving, or maybe I'm not. The fog is heavier tonight. It moves like breath, slow, deliberate, alive. Each wisp curls around my legs, like it's leading me somewhere I shouldn't go. The forest has gone quiet again. Too quiet. Even my footsteps feel swallowed. No echo, no birds, just the faint pulse of air shifting between trees. Then I hear it. A whisper. Soft at first. So soft I almost think it's the wind playing through the leaves, but it comes again. Not one voice, many. Thin, layered, like a conversation happening just behind my ear. I turn. Nothing. Only fog. Moving the way water moves. Alive, but without a shape. I stand still, listening. The whispers slide around me. I can't catch the words, but I can feel their rhythm. Urgent, hushed, like a secret shared too close. I take a step forward. The air stirs. Leaves shift against my boots. And for a heartbeat, I swear I feel something brush against my sleeve. Light. Gentle. Intentional. I freeze. The whispering stops. A silence follows, thick enough to feel. Then the voices return, fainter now, weaving in circles, as if they're moving through the fog itself. I whisper back, "Who's there?" The words feel small. They dissolve as soon as they leave my lips. Something answers. Not words, but movement. A breeze curls through the clearing, lifting the edges of my coat, carrying the smell of wet leaves and distant rain. The whispers rise with it. They drift from tree to tree, never staying still, never close enough to understand. I can almost pick out tones. A woman's sigh, a child's hum, a man breathing too near. I spin slowly, lantern raised, trying to find the source. The fog glows pale in the light. Every droplet sparkles, then fades, like the air itself is blinking. I take another step, then another. The ground beneath me feels uneven, soft patches that give slightly under my weight. The whispering grows louder. curling through the trees, folding in on itself. I hear my name, just once, faint, drawn out, as if the fog learned how to speak it. My skin tightens. The lantern shakes in my hand. I want to move, but I don't know which way is forward anymore. The voices begin to change, less human now, more like static, like breath scraping against wood. The air shivers with it. Each sound overlaps the next until it's impossible to tell where one ends. Leaves drift down from above, brushing my face. Each one feels too deliberate, as if something unseen is reaching out through the branches. I flinch back. But the touch follows, soft across my cheek. It lingers there. Almost kind, almost guiding. I whisper, "What do you want?" The answer comes as movement. A swirl in the fog, curling ahead of me like a path being drawn in real time. I hesitate. Then I follow. The whispering keeps pace with me, always moving just beyond reach. It feels like the voices are inside the mist, pulling it along, forming a shape that never fully appears. The air grows colder. My breath trembles in front of me, thin, silver, fading too quickly. The fog thickens. The whispers slow, stretching into long sighs that echo from every side. I can't tell where I am anymore. Every tree looks the same. Every sound repeats itself, folding back until it becomes silence. Then, a breath at my ear. Not imagined. Close enough to feel the warmth of it. I turn sharply, lantern lifted high. No one. Just the fog, moving backward now, retreating as if it's thinking. The whispers fade, then return all at once, a wave of overlapping tones. Too many voices. Too many words. None of them real. The air hums. I can feel the vibration deep in my chest. It's not outside anymore. It's in the silence, woven into it, pressing softly at the edges of my thoughts. I close my eyes. It's easier to hear that way. The voices become clearer. They say things that almost make sense. Fragments, memories, things I've never told anyone. I open my eyes. The forest is watching. Every tree seems to lean toward me. Every branch reaching just enough to touch the air around my shoulders. The fog folds inward, closing like a hand. The whispers sink lower. Barely there. Just a hum, a breath. I take one slow step back. Then another. The air feels heavier, but quieter. The forest exhales long and low, until the fog begins to thin again. The voices fade, one by one, until all that's left is the faint rustle of leaves brushing past my face, as if something unseen is still standing close, still trying to speak, and I can't tell if the whisper is coming from the wind or from me. The fog lifted just enough for me to see it. A cabin. Old, sunken slightly into the earth, as if the forest had been trying to bury it for years. Its roof sagged in the middle. The windows were dark, too dark, like glass filled with ink. I hadn't noticed it before. It shouldn't have been there. The trees around it leaned close, their branches pressing together, forming a kind of barrier. But through the mist, the cabin seemed to breathe. The air felt heavier now. Wet wood, cold moss, something metallic beneath it all. I stepped forward. The ground squelched under my boots, mud clinging to every step. The fog drifted low across the porch. Even the lantern light couldn't push it away. It just swirled, like it didn't want me to see clearly. Up close, the cabin looked hollow. Not empty, just drained. Like something had taken everything living out of it and left the shell behind. One of the shutters tapped softly against the wall. Once. Then again. Slow, steady, like breathing. I raised the lantern toward the nearest window. Something moved inside, a shape. Slow, smooth, sliding across the darkness. I froze. The glass reflected my light for a moment, but when I shifted, the shape didn't match my movement. It stayed still, watching. The fog thickened again, swallowing half the cabin from view. I told myself it was just my mind, the way the mist played tricks. But my heartbeat was too loud, too real. Then the door creaked. It opened on its own. The sound was long and hollow, echoing through the trees like a breath drawn too deep. I didn't move. The door stopped halfway, shaking gently, as if waiting for me to finish what it started. The air spilling from the doorway was colder, still, empty. I stepped up onto the porch. The wood groaned beneath me, soft in places where it should have been solid. The lantern light trembled against the doorway, but the dark inside didn't move. It swallowed the glow whole. I whispered, "Hello?" The word came out too thin. It vanished before it touched the walls. The cabin didn't answer, but something inside shifted, a faint creak. One board bending under weight. Then silence. The smell hit me next. Old rain, dust, and something faintly sweet, like rot hidden beneath floorboards. I stepped inside. The air felt thick, as if I'd walked into water. The floor sagged under my heel. Each step made a soft complaint, like the cabin remembered being alive. The walls were covered in peeling paint. Beneath it, dark lines ran through the wood, curling like veins. I moved the lantern toward the far corner. The light didn't reach it. It only stretched halfway before being swallowed whole by the dark. For a moment, I thought I saw something move there. A faint shift, like fabric being pulled tight. Then, nothing. I listened. The cabin listened back. My own breath sounded too loud. It bounced off the walls, came back softer. Then another sound. A creak. One step. Not mine. It came from deeper inside. Slow, deliberate, like something was testing the floor before it moved. I turned toward the hallway. The door frames there were crooked, leaning into the fog that spilled across the floor. The creak came again. Closer now. I lifted the lantern higher. The light trembled against the far wall. Nothing. But I could feel it. That weight in the air. A presence pressing against my chest, breathing with me. I took one step forward. The floor complained. A long, tired groan that echoed through every beam. Another sound answered from behind me, a different board. Moving after I had stopped, my skin tightened. I didn't turn. I couldn't. The air behind me shifted. A brush of cold against my neck. Faint, almost kind. My lantern flickered once, then steadied. The silence thickened again, but now it wasn't empty. It was waiting. I finally turned. The doorway stood open. The forest beyond drowned in fog. Nothing moved, but inside the window's reflection, the one I had seen before, something swayed. Not a person. Not exactly. Just a darker shadow moving where light shouldn't reach. I backed toward the door. Every step drew another creak from the floor, as if the cabin didn't want me to go. The air felt wrong now, like it was pushing against my lungs instead of filling them. The lantern flame stretched long and thin, as if something unseen was drawing it closer. Then, silence. A silence so deep. I could hear the faint hum of the fog outside. I stepped out onto the porch. The door began to close behind me, slowly, without sound. When it finally shut, the forest exhaled. The weight lifted. I stood there for a long time, watching that dark cabin through the mist, and just before I turned away, one of the windows blinked, a flicker of movement. Like the shadow inside had stepped closer to watch me leave. Curiosity turned into fear then. And I didn't look back again. The path was narrow. It wound through the trees like a thin scar in the earth, just wide enough for one person. The air was cold, not sharp, just heavy. It clung to my skin, smelled faintly of wet leaves and iron. Twilight sat low between the branches. The sun had slipped behind the hills, leaving only that pale gray light that makes every shadow look like it's breathing. I walked slowly. Each step pressed into damp soil. The trees whispered when I brushed past them. A quiet rustle, soft enough to sound like words if I listened too long. Somewhere far away, a bird called once, then stopped. The forest settled again. Just me, just the quiet, until it wasn't. A footstep, behind me, soft, measured, pressed down into the same earth I had just stepped on. I froze. The air didn't move. Even the mist seemed to hold its breath. I turned, The path stretched behind me, empty. Only fog, curling slow through the trees. Nothing moved. I waited, counting my heartbeat in the silence. Then, when I turned back to walk, I heard it again. Another step. Same rhythm, same weight, as if something was walking when I did, and stopping when I stopped. I slowed my pace, listened. The faint crunch of leaves followed. Half a second late, matching me exactly. My throat felt dry. The path seemed longer now. The trees closer. I tried to breathe quietly, but the sound of it seemed to echo between the trunks. The footsteps did too. Always there. Just behind, never too close. I stopped again. The forest went still, only a faint hum in the air, that electric tension before a storm. I turned around. No one. Only fog. Pale and endless, like the world had forgotten to end. The longer I looked, the more I saw shapes in it. Not quite people, not quite trees. Just motion, fading as soon as I focused. I whispered, "Is someone there?" The fog shifted, but no voice came back. The question hung in the air, absorbed by the stillness. I took another step forward. The sound behind me followed. This time it was clearer. 2 steps, then a pause. 2 more, almost in sync. The rhythm crawled up my spine. I stopped again, my breath shaking out in short bursts. The silence that followed was too perfect, too aware. Every leaf, every branch, felt like it was listening. The path seemed to pulse under my feet, as if something deep beneath it was shifting. I looked down. The soil was damp, dark. My footprints trailed behind me, but the last few looked wrong, too deep, too large. Pressed into the mud as if someone heavier had stepped where I had. I crouched, my lantern trembling in my hand. The prints weren't mine. Each one was longer, wider, slightly blurred at the edges, like they'd been made in a hurry, like something was trying to keep up. I stood quickly. The mist closed in tighter. The trees leaned closer together, branches arching overhead like ribs. My pulse thudded in my ears. I started walking faster. My boots hit the path hard, crunching leaves, breaking twigs, and behind me, footsteps, matching again. Not slower, not faster. Perfectly aligned. Every sound I made came back doubled. Each breath, each step, each small shift of weight, mirrored. The forest stretched in both directions now, identical no matter where I looked. Left or right, ahead or behind, just trees, just fog, no end. The path wound forward endlessly, like the forest was repeating itself. My legs ached. My hands were cold. I didn't know how long I'd been walking. At some point, the footsteps began before mine, just 1 beat early, like whatever followed me had learned the rhythm and wanted to lead. I stopped moving altogether. The air pressed against my chest, thick and damp. The last echo of steps faded away, silence again. Deep, empty, almost kind. Then, a breath, right behind me. Faint. Barely warm against the back of my neck, my body went still. Even my heartbeat felt too loud. The breath lingered, slow, steady, just enough to move the small hairs along my skin. I turned, slowly, hoping not to see anything at all. The fog shifted, curling around the trees, but for a second, I thought I saw it, a pale outline, human-shaped. Leaning forward from the mist, then it melted back into the gray, gone. The path behind me was empty again, but I knew it hadn't left. I could feel it. Still there. Still waiting, matching my breath now instead of my steps. I stood in the middle of that endless path, the forest silent around me, and I realized I wasn't lost. I was being followed, and it didn't need to be seen to stay close. The fog came early that evening, thick, slow like something alive. It rolled across the ground, swallowing the trail, turning the forest into a blur of white and gray. Even the trees looked different, taller, distorted, like they were leaning in to listen. The air felt heavy, cold enough to bite, wet enough to cling to my sleeves, I could see my breath. It drifted forward, vanishing into the mist like it was being pulled away. I kept walking. There was no sound, no wind, no birds. Only that faint hum of quiet pressure that fog always carries. The kind that makes your heart beat too loud. After a while, I couldn't tell where the path was anymore. The ground looked the same in every direction. Pale, soft, covered in thin layers of fallen leaves. I slowed my steps. Something in the air changed. A presence. A shift too subtle to name, and then, through the fog ahead, a shape, still, human-sized, motionless. I froze. For a second, I thought it might be a tree. A stump, maybe, but no. The edges were too clean, too defined. It stood in the middle of the path. Facing me, I couldn't see its face, just an outline. Arms at its sides, head slightly tilted, like it was listening. My hands started to shake. The air around me felt colder, thicker. Each breath scraped my throat on the way out. I wanted to move, to step back, but my body wouldn't listen. It felt like the fog had weight, pressing against my legs, holding me there. We stayed like that, silent, watching each other. Though I couldn't see its eyes, I felt them. Locked on me, unblinking, every instinct screamed at me to run, but I didn't. I couldn't. The longer I stared, the less human it looked. Its shoulders seemed wrong, too straight. Its head, just slightly off-center. Like the shape of a person drawn by someone who had never actually seen one. My heartbeat filled the space between us. The fog moved, sliding across the figure's legs, but it never broke apart. It never blurred. Everything around it swirled, but it stayed still. Sharp, like the fog was avoiding it. I blinked, just once, and it was gone. Completely. The space where it stood was empty. Only fog. Only silence. My breath came out too fast. Too loud. I turned in a slow circle, eyes scanning the trees, the path, the mist. Nothing. But the air felt different now. Charged. Close. Like the space it had filled was still occupied, even if it wasn't visible anymore. I took one step back. The ground was soft beneath my boot. Another step. The mist shifted again, curling low, wrapping around my knees. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw movement behind it, something sliding just out of view. Keeping pace, I whispered, "Who's there?" My voice sounded small, swallowed instantly. No answer, only that quiet hum again, low, steady, almost like breathing, but not mine. The fog brushed against my cheek, cold and damp like fingers tracing my skin. I turned toward it, but there was no one there, only the faint shape of the trees, half hidden, melting into white. The forest no longer felt empty. It felt full, crowded with things I couldn't see. Each breath grew shallower, each second longer. I wanted to leave, but I didn't know which direction led out. Every way looked the same, so I stood there, still, hoping the fog would lift, but it didn't. And then, through the pale mist ahead, I saw it again, closer this time. No features, no color, just the faint outline of a body, half-formed, drifting between the trees. It didn't move toward me. It didn't move away. It simply stood, waiting. The fog pulsed once, like it took a breath, and then gone again. The silence after was worse than the sight. It pressed against my ears, into my chest. My pulse felt too loud, too human, like it didn't belong here. I whispered to myself, to fill the air, but the words died before they reached my lips. The forest stayed still, but the feeling didn't fade. I could sense it, just beyond the mist, watching, listening. Every time I blinked, the space ahead seemed to shift, as if something stood there, waiting to be seen again. I never ran. I don't know why. Maybe I was afraid that if I did, it would follow, or worse. That it already was. When I finally moved, I walked carefully, quietly. The fog thinned, but the feeling didn't leave. Even now, I can still see that shape, still standing, still waiting, just out of reach, and I know if I ever turn back, it'll be there. The night feels heavier than before, still air, no wind, just the faint press of silence against my ears. The trees rise around me, tall black silhouettes, their branches knit together above, hiding even the stars. My flashlight slices through the dark, a narrow beam trembling in my hand. The forest smells damp. Old leaves, cold bark, a hint of something metallic, like rain that never came. I keep walking. Each step sinks into soft soil, crunches against fallen twigs. That's when I hear it, low, distant, like the hum of electricity buried deep in the woods. It's faint at first, barely there. A pulse beneath the quiet. I stop to listen. It doesn't stop. The sound floats between the trees, steady, unnatural, not wind, not insects, something else. It reminds me of static, like an old radio tuned between stations, the kind of sound that fills empty rooms and makes silence feel alive. I take another step. The hum shifts, growing sharper. Closer. I stand still again. And it fades. I move. It grows. The sound reacts. To me, I test it, taking slow, uneven steps. It follows, rising when I move, falling when I stop. The realization crawls down my spine. Whatever it is, it's aware. The beam of my flashlight flickers. Once, twice. I tap it gently, but it keeps dimming, as if the air itself is draining it. The static grows louder. There's a rhythm now, like a whisper trying to form words but not quite human. It echoes through the trees, circling me, never settling in one place. I whisper, "Hello?" The hum spikes, sharp enough to make my teeth ache. I flinch, dropping the light for a moment. When I pick it up, the beam trembles over the trunks. The trees look closer. Their bark glistens like wet skin. The static lowers again, soft, pulsing, almost curious. It feels like it's waiting. I take a single step forward. The air vibrates. Leaves tremble overhead, but there's no wind. The flashlight fades again, leaving the forest in half dark. The hum begins to split, layers of sound weaving through each other like tangled voices, too many to count. Too soft to understand. They move between the trees like breath through hollow wood. I can't tell if they're speaking or just pretending to. My chest tightens. Every part of me says to run, but I don't, because under the fear there's something else, something that feels almost inviting. I take another step. The whisper rises, sharp, urgent. It's all around me now, above, below, inside my skull. The flashlight flares white, then dies completely. I'm left in darkness. Only the static remains. It swells until it fills everything, like the forest itself is humming. Then, for a moment it clears, and in that gap of silence I hear something distinct. A single breath. Not mine. Too close. Too slow. I turn toward the sound, but there's nothing there. Only the trees. Only fog drifting low to the ground. Then the hum returns. Louder, sharper, alive. It climbs higher in pitch until it feels like it's inside my head, pressing against the edges of thought. My heart beats in rhythm with it. Or maybe it's the other way around. I back away, stumbling over roots. The ground feels unstable, soft, pulsing faintly beneath my boots. The static seems to breathe with me now. Every inhale makes it rise. Every exhale makes it fade. It's listening. I stand perfectly still, trying not to move, not to breathe. For a heartbeat, everything stops. No hum, no flicker, just silence, pure and endless. Then a faint, new sound emerges. A crackle, like a whisper right against my ear. My name. I'm not sure if I heard it or if I thought it. But the forest reacts. The static bursts back to life, sweeping through the branches like a wave of invisible current. The trees shimmer for a moment, their outlines glowing faintly, a dull, colorless light that vanishes as quickly as it appears. I take a step back. And the static retreats, I take another. It follows, always in sync, always responding. A strange calm settles over me. Fear, twisted with fascination. The sound doesn't feel hostile anymore. It feels aware, like it knows me. I lift my hand slowly and the static swells. Warm, vibrant, alive. It hums once, then fades into the distance, melting back into the trees. The flashlight flickers on again, its beam weak but steady. Only the forest remains, still, silent. But when I move, deep between the trunks, I swear I can hear it again, that faint, patient hum, waiting for me to take another step. The forest had grown quieter tonight, even the usual rhythm, the rustle of branches, the faint hum of insects, had thinned to nothing. Only the soft drag of my footsteps on damp soil remained. The fog clung low, coiling around the base of the trees like something hiding its breath. I'd been walking for what felt like hours. The path curved gently, its edges lost beneath fallen leaves. That's when I saw it. A trail sign. Old. Crooked. Half swallowed by roots that had crawled up from the ground like pale veins. The wood was dark with age, edges chipped, the lettering worn smooth by years of rain and touch. At first, it looked ordinary, until I noticed the direction it pointed wasn't one I recognized. I stopped. I knew this trail. I'd followed it before. It was supposed to split into two clear paths, left toward the creek, right toward the ridge, but this sign pointed straight ahead. Into a part of the forest that didn't exist on any map. The arrow leaned slightly upward, its point lost in the fog. The letters carved into the plank were faint, but when I leaned closer, they seemed to shimmer beneath the thin beam of my flashlight. The name carved there. I don't remember what it said, because every time I blinked, it changed, just a little, lines shifted, letters bent. Like the word was still deciding what it wanted to be. My hand hovered over the wood. Cold air breathed through the trees, sliding against my skin. I could almost feel the hum of something beneath the surface. A faint vibration, as if the sign had a heartbeat. For a long moment I just stood there, listening to the silence press in from all sides. It felt wrong to touch it, but I did. The wood was dry, too dry for this weather, and beneath my fingertips the carving felt shallow, like it had been etched just moments ago. The letters shifted again, not visually this time, physically. The grooves moved against my skin, like something inside the wood was rearranging itself. I stepped back, my breath visible in the cold. The sign creaked softly, tilting further toward that unknown path. My flashlight flickered once. When it steadied, I saw it. Something faint scratched into the post below the arrow. Small words. Barely visible. Don't follow it. The edges of the letters were rough, desperate. Scratched by something blunt. I swallowed hard. The fog around me thickened, curling higher now, veiling the trees above. I turned to look behind me, but the path I came from was gone. Only white. Dense, shifting white. When I looked back, the sign was closer. It hadn't fallen. It hadn't moved in any way I could see. But somehow, it filled the space between us. The arrow pointed almost directly at my chest. The air around it seemed heavier now, charged, like the forest was holding its breath. I whispered, "Where does it go?" No answer. But the wood creaked again, and this time the arrow shifted slightly, inviting. A thin path appeared through the fog, a narrow line of darker ground. It wasn't there before. Each tree along its edge leaned in just enough to frame it, as though the forest itself was shaping the way. My heart was pounding, not fast, slow, deep, echoing through my chest like a drum. Every step forward felt wrong, but not in a way I could explain. It wasn't fear. Not exactly. It was the quiet realization that I was walking into someone else's story, someone who had already been here, someone who had seen the same sign, The fog pulsed again, light shimmering faintly through the mist. I took another step. The ground beneath my boots changed texture, softer, almost spongy. The air grew colder. Each breath came out in clouds that drifted upward instead of away. Somewhere in the distance, a single branch snapped, then silence. The kind of silence that swallows thought. I turned back toward the sign, but it was gone. No post. No path. Just fog. Only the faint impression of where it had been. A shadow in the mist, lingering for a heartbeat, then fading completely. I stood there, unsure if I had moved at all. The forest stretched endlessly now. Every direction looked the same, but deep down, I knew I hadn't strayed from the path. The path had changed beneath me. It was no longer mine. I looked ahead again, and in the shifting gray, I thought I saw shapes, faint figures, walking just out of reach, moving the same way I did, step for step. Their outlines rippled, as if carved from the same fog. And somewhere behind me, through the still air, I heard the faintest creak, wood against wood, as if the sign had returned, pointing once more, but this time, toward me. It started as a thin mist, rolling low across the path, the kind that clings to the grass and breathes against your ankles like something alive. By the time I reached the clearing, it had thickened, a pale, humming fog pressing close, cold against my skin. The trees disappeared first, then the trail, then even the sky, swallowed whole until all that was left was this trembling white. I stopped walking. The air felt heavy, wet. Every breath left a chill behind my teeth. At first I thought the humming came from far away, a faint vibration, low and steady, like a distant engine behind glass. But it was closer. All around me, the fog wasn't quiet. It was alive with movement, tiny shifts, soft pulses, a rhythm that almost matched my heartbeat. I tried to listen, to separate one sound from another, but it wasn't sound anymore. It was pressure. It pressed against my ears, slid down my throat, buzzed faintly beneath my skin. Every time I exhaled, the hum deepened. As if the fog was breathing with me, I whispered, "Hello?" The word barely left my mouth. The fog caught it, absorbed it. Then the hum answered, not with a voice, but with a shift in tone, rising, falling, a melody that wasn't meant for human ears. It wasn't random. It followed rhythm, almost deliberate. Shapes began to move inside the white, faint outlines, tall, slow, like something walking just behind a veil. I tried to focus, but the more I stared, the more the shapes blurred, edges dissolving into mist. Each movement stirred the hum, as if their presence made the air vibrate harder. I stepped back, but the fog moved with me. Every motion I made sent small ripples through the humming, tiny waves echoing outward, fading slow. My hand brushed against the air, and I felt resistance. Not solid, not liquid, just a faint pushback, like touching the surface of a current. I could smell damp earth, old bark, something faintly metallic, the taste of rain sharp on my tongue. Somewhere deeper in the fog, the hum shifted again. Longer now, drawn out, like a sigh stretched into sound. Then I realized it was mimicking me. Every time I moved, it changed. Every breath I took seemed to echo back a half-second later. I lifted my hand again. The fog shimmered, and the hum followed, rising slightly like a question. I should have run, but I didn't. Something about it felt calm, almost hypnotic, like standing in front of a quiet ocean that doesn't want to drown you, just watch you breathe. The shapes grew closer. I could feel them before I saw them. The temperature dropped, a sudden bite against my neck, and then one of them stopped moving. Stillness settled. The hum thinned to a single tone, high, trembling, hovering just below hearing. My flashlight flickered once, then failed completely. In the dark, the fog glowed faintly. Not from any light, from itself. A pale shimmer pulsed through it in time with the hum, and for a heartbeat I thought I saw faces. Not human exactly, but familiar shapes where eyes should be. Mouths that didn't open, yet still moved. The hum broke apart, splintered into whispers. Low, layered, thousands of tiny voices melting into one another. They weren't saying words I knew, but there was rhythm, tone, like a language that existed only in vibration. Each whisper brushed against me, soft as breath. I closed my eyes, and in that darkness I felt weightless, as if the fog had drawn me in completely. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I was still standing or floating. Then, just as slowly as it began, the hum faded. The whispers pulled back, retreating into the mist. The air stilled. The pressure lifted. When I opened my eyes, the fog had thinned. The trees were visible again, their silhouettes black against the faint gray. The ground beneath my boots was soaked, as if rain had fallen while I was gone. But the sky was dry. I turned once, half expecting to see shapes watching from the fog line. Nothing moved, just silence, and a faint, lingering vibration beneath the surface of the air, so faint I couldn't tell if it was still there, or only in my head. The forest seemed calm again, normal, but when I took a step forward, the ground hummed, barely perceptible. A low note, matching the rhythm of my pulse, and somewhere far back in the fog, something hummed in reply. Night settled like a weight, thick, still, almost too quiet. I stopped walking when the last light faded. The forest around me turned into a black maze, branches tangled like veins against the sky. There was no wind, no movement. Only the faint smell of wet bark and something older, like earth that hadn't been disturbed in years. I should have stopped earlier. But the trail was gone, swallowed by shadow, and turning back didn't feel safer. Then, a rustle above me, small at first, soft, like the shuffle of dry leaves brushing together. I froze. Looked up. The trees swayed slightly, though the air was still. Another rustle. This time sharper, closer. It scraped against the dark like claws dragging through paper. My heart beat slow but heavy, each thud too loud in the silence. I told myself it was nothing. A bird, maybe. An animal settling for the night. But then it came again. A quick, brittle movement, branches bending under weight. Whatever it wasn't small. The sound moved, above, then behind me. I turned slowly, eyes straining against the dark. Nothing, just shadows pressing. In at the edges of the narrow path, the moon tried to break through the clouds, a pale sliver of light, catching the outline of trees. That's when I saw it, a shadow sliding between trunks. Too tall, too fluid, I blinked. It was gone. The rustling started again, faster now, circling. Leaves trembled, then stilled. Something was moving with intent. My breath came out uneven, clouding in the cold air. The scent of damp wood mixed with something faintly metallic, like rain before it falls. I listened, tried to measure distance, but every rustle echoed as if the forest was full of them, moving in every direction at once. The darkness thickened. My flashlight felt useless, its weak beam swallowed whole by the trees. I took a step forward. The leaves beneath my boots crackled. Instantly, the rustling stopped. Silence, the kind that doesn't just fill the air, it presses against your skin. I waited. Counted my heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. Then something brushed the back of my neck. Light. Quick. Gone before I could turn, the air behind me shifted, carrying a faint warmth, like someone had been standing too close. I turned. No one. Only the glint of a branch catching moonlight. But the rustling began again, directly above. It sounded heavier now, like something dragging itself from branch to branch. Wood creaked. Leaves scattered. I stepped back, my heels sinking into soft earth. Something in the shadows moved again, slow, deliberate, and then silence returned, complete. Not a single leaf stirred. Even the air refused to move. I realized my hands were shaking, cold sweat beneath my jacket. Every nerve stretched tight. I whispered, Is someone there? The words hung between the trees, swallowed whole. For a long moment, nothing. Then the rustle came again. Lower this time, closer. It wasn't above me anymore. It was on the ground, moving just out of sight, weaving between the roots. My flashlight flickered across the forest floor and caught a glimpse of motion. A shadow. Thin, bending, sliding along the dirt as though it wasn't bound by shape. I stumbled backward. Branches cracked under my boots. The rustling followed, matching each step. Each movement, it wasn't echoing, it was mimicking. When I stopped, it stopped. When I turned my head, it shifted too, always behind me. I could feel it now, that faint charge in the air like static before a storm. My breath trembled. The forest seemed smaller, the trees closing in. Then, without warning, the sound rose, a frenzy of scraping leaves and snapping twigs racing through the dark. I turned, and for a split second, something darted past. A blur without edges. The air moved violently. Cold brushed against my cheek, followed by the dry scent of soil. Then, nothing. The forest went dead again. My pulse slowed in my ears, heavy, uneven. I stood there for what felt like minutes, waiting for it to start again. It didn't, only silence, deep and endless. The shadows seemed thicker now, as if they were hiding something just beneath the surface. Every instinct told me to leave, but my feet refused. I turned the flashlight upward, toward the branches above. Leaves hung still. No movement. And yet, I could feel it, a presence, watching, patient, the kind that doesn't need to be seen to know it's there. A faint rustle brushed against my ear, as gentle as a whisper. Then the forest fell silent again, completely. And in that silence, I realized it wasn't the forest that had gone. Still, it was holding its breath. The path ended at water. Black. Still, it stretched out like a mirror that refused to reflect anything at all. An old wooden bridge crossed. It, long, narrow, its railings splintered and gray with age. The fog was thicker here. It clung to the boards, weaving through the gaps like breath that wouldn't fade. I hesitated at the edge. The forest behind me felt colder now, the air heavy as if waiting. The first step was soft. The plank bowed slightly under my weight, then settled with a low groan. It smelled of rot and wet wood, of something forgotten. Another step. The water below didn't move, but it felt awake. Each footfall echoed into the fog. One, then another. The bridge swayed faintly as if testing my presence. Halfway across, the air grew strange. Still, yet charged. I glanced down. Only blackness. No reflection of my lantern. No glimpse of depth. It was like staring into an open mouth. The creaking beneath me grew louder, sharp, uneven, as though the bridge was breathing. I stopped. Listened. Nothing. Then, a shift, subtle at first. A plank moved under my boot. Not from weight, but from something beneath. The motion was slow, deliberate. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The wood pulsed once, then again. It felt alive. The rail beside me trembled, splinters falling into the void below. I took a step back, but the plank behind me tilted slightly, pressing upward against my heel, as if the bridge was reshaping itself. I stared ahead. The far end of the bridge was gone in fog, a pale blur that seemed to breathe with the rhythm beneath me. Every instinct whispered, "Don't move." The air smelled different now, metallic, damp like rain soaked through with iron. A ripple disturbed the black water below. It spread slowly, too slow for a drop or fish. It moved like something vast, just beneath the surface. The bridge groaned again, a long, aching sound that came from its center. I whispered to myself, "Just keep going." The words didn't feel like mine. They floated away, swallowed by the fog. I forced another step forward. The plank beneath me shuddered, then settled. The next one rose slightly, as if anticipating me. Each movement felt timed, synchronized with my breath. When I exhaled, the bridge exhaled too, a soft creak followed by the faintest thud from beneath. It was following my rhythm. Halfway now. Maybe less. The air thickened, the lantern's glow shrinking into a halo around my feet. Something brushed against my ankle. Not wind, not water. It lingered for a second, cool and almost... Careful! I looked down again. There was no reflection, but I could sense something staring back. My fingers tightened on the lantern. Its light flickered, once, twice, then steadied again, though dimmer than before. Another ripple crossed the water, this time closer. The boards shifted again, but not from below. They pressed upward, then downward, as though the bridge was breathing in time with the ripples. I couldn't tell if it wanted me to move forward or if it wanted me to stop. I took another step. The entire bridge shuddered. A deep, low creak rolled through the wood, vibrating under my soles. I felt it rise through my legs, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. My pulse matched it, panicked and uneven. The fog pulsed too, every beat sending faint waves through the air. Something in me broke. I turned, but the path behind me was gone. Only fog. Only black water. The bridge had become a narrow island, floating between nothing and nowhere. The planks shifted again, one by one, as if something below was tracing my steps. The sound grew rhythmic. Tap, creak, pause, tap, creak, almost like footsteps, but upside down. The boards beneath my feet began to bend, slowly, methodically, as if something beneath was pushing upward, trying to reach the surface. I couldn't breathe. The air was too thick, the silence too deliberate. The next plank rose slightly, then cracked. A jagged sound echoed through the fog, sharp enough to make me flinch. The lantern flickered violently, casting long shadows across the boards, shadows that didn't match my shape. I stepped forward again, faster this time. The bridge moaned, the water beneath it whispering in broken rhythm. The air trembled. The fog pulsed brighter for just a second, and then stilled. When I finally reached the other side, I didn't turn back, but I could feel it, the weight of the bridge behind me, breathing, watching, remembering. And as I stepped onto solid ground, the last creak came, long, low, almost sad, as if it missed me already. It rained the night before. The earth was soft, dark and heavy beneath my boots. Mist still hung over the path, thin and slow like breath left behind by the forest. The air smelled of wet bark and something older, something that hadn't moved in years. Each step sank slightly. A faint squelch in the mud, a trace left behind. I didn't think much of it, until I noticed there were too many. At first, I thought I'd stepped twice in the same place, that the pattern was mine, just deeper in some spots. But the spacing was wrong, too even, too deliberate. I turned. Behind me, 2 perfect rows of prints trailed through the mud, every one of them fresh, crisp around the edges. The fog pressed close, thick enough to blur the trees, thin enough to let the ground stay visible. No one was there. I waited, listening. But the woods were still. No rustle. No bird, no breath but mine. I looked again. The prints were side by side now. Mine. And another set. Smaller. Barefoot. The shape was strange. Toes pressed deep, heels shallow, as if whoever made them walked carefully, deliberately. I took a step forward. The mud pulled slightly at my boot. When I stepped again, I heard it. A second step. Perfectly timed. Just behind me. I froze. The air trembled for a moment, like something holding its breath. Slowly I turned. The new footprints stopped right where I had stopped, still glistening with fresh moisture, edges sharp and sinking deeper as if someone had just stepped there. But no one was there. Only the trees. Dark and watching, my pulse thudded against my neck, steady but loud. I tried again. One step, the echo followed. Soft, precise, like a shadow learning how to walk. The mist thickened, curling between the branches and swallowing the path ahead. I started walking faster. The steps behind me stayed close, never rushing, never falling behind, always matching mine. Each footfall landed a breath after mine, like the forest was memorizing me. The smell of the earth grew heavier, wet and metallic. My boots slipped once, and when I steadied myself, I heard it again. A faint, careful step. Right behind my heel, I didn't dare turn. The trees leaned closer now, their bark slick with dew, their roots hidden under fog. Somewhere deeper in the woods, a branch snapped, quiet but close enough to make my heart jolt. I stopped. The steps stopped. The silence after felt. Wrong, too thick, too aware. I could almost feel it, whatever it was, standing just at the edge of the mist, watching me. I turned slowly. The prints stretched out behind me, each one perfect. Each one newer than the last. The barefoot ones ended just a few feet away. And yet, the ground beneath them still seemed to move slightly, as if the weight had only just lifted. The fog coiled tighter, curling around my knees, my hands, my throat. The air vibrated faintly, a hum low enough to feel instead of hear. I whispered, without meaning to. Stop, the word felt too loud, too sharp against the quiet. But the next step came anyway, soft, slow, measured. The mud rippled with each print. Not pressed down, but pulled up, as if the ground itself exhaled to make space for them. Something cold brushed my arm. Just air, maybe, but it lingered. Every instinct told me to run. But the thought of turning my back felt worse. I stepped backward. The prints didn't move. I took another step. Still nothing. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then, a single wet footprint appeared between mine. It formed slowly, as though invisible skin pressed down into the mud, leaving behind the shape of something human. But wrong. My chest tightened. My breath came out shaky. Another print formed beside it. Then another. They weren't following now. They were circling. The air thinned. The fog rising higher, swallowing the path, the trees, everything but the ground beneath me. The last thing I remember clearly was the sound, soft steps echoing on all sides, in perfect rhythm. When I finally turned and ran, I didn't look back. But I still hear them sometimes, in wet earth, on quiet nights, when the world feels too still. Footsteps that never belonged to me. It stood at the edge of the field, alone. The grass around it grew shorter there, like even the earth refused to touch its roots. The evening light bent strangely through its branches, long and uneven, as though the shadows didn't belong to it. I remember the air was still, too still, even the insects were silent. The tree's bark was dark, almost black and wet-looking despite the dry air. When I stepped closer, the ground softened under my boots, like the soil itself had forgotten how to breathe. I don't know why I went near it. It felt like it was calling. Not with sound, but with weight. A quiet pull, right behind my ribs. The branches twisted upward, but some bent down too, curving toward the ground like they wanted to reach me. Each one was thick and uneven, and the way they moved, not in the wind, but as if something inside them shifted slowly, stretching beneath the bark. I stopped. The air felt heavier near the trunk. It smelled like whetstone and old iron, and faintly, like breath. My hand lifted before I realized it. I don't know what I meant to do. Touch it, maybe, prove it was just a tree. But when I got close enough, I heard it. A low, deep sound, almost too low to hear. More a vibration than a voice. It came from the trunk, from inside it. The bark swelled slightly, like something pressed against it from within, testing its strength. I took a step back. The sound followed. Not echoing, not repeating, but responding. I could feel it now, in my chest, in my bones. That low hum, rising, falling, breathing. I whispered something. I think it was hello. The tree creaked softly. Not from movement, but like an answer. The branches above shifted, slow and deliberate. Their shapes stretched, casting new shadows on the ground. One reached further than the rest. Toward me, the air cooled instantly. my breath fogged out in thin strands. It felt wrong, like I was standing near something alive, but not human and not kind. Still, I couldn't leave. It wasn't fear holding me there, not yet. It was fascination. The bark seemed to pulse now, barely noticeable at first, then steady, like a heartbeat. Every few seconds, a shiver ran through it, and in those moments I could feel eyes on me. Not from above, not from around, from within. I circled slowly, boots brushing through the brittle grass. The far side of the trunk was torn open. A deep split ran from the roots to the middle, wide enough for a hand to fit. Inside, the wood wasn't wood at all. It was darker, slick, alive. I leaned closer. The smell hit me first, earth and rot and something sweet, like flowers left too long in water. Then came the sound again. The hum turned to a growl, low and steady, not loud, not angry, just aware. The air moved around me, but the leaves didn't stir. I looked up. The branches were lowering again, slowly bending until their tips hovered inches from my shoulders. They didn't touch. They just waited. The trunk swelled once more, and I could swear something inside it shifted forward. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw fingers pressing through the wood, shaping faint ridges under the bark. Then the growl deepened. The ground trembled, a subtle vibration. Like a warning, every part of me screamed to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I could feel the tree breathing now, each inhale drawing the air thinner, colder, each exhale heavy with damp heat. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even alive in the way I understood. It was just there, ancient, waiting. I stepped back slowly. The hum softened, as though it were listening, deciding. The branches stilled. The pulsing slowed. The air eased, but the weight of its attention did not lift. Even from a distance, I could feel it watching. Through the bark! Through the dark. Through me. When I finally turned away, the ground behind me felt lighter, as if the forest had exhaled. But before the path curved out of sight, I looked back once. The branches were still bent, still reaching, and though the air was quiet, I could swear the tree was breathing, slowly, deeply, patiently, as if it knew I'd come too close once. And would again. The mist came back tonight, thicker than before. It always starts the same way. A faint shimmer in the air, a thin veil crawling low across the ground. Then, before I realize it, the world disappears. The trees dissolve first, their outlines fading into soft shapes. Then the path. Then the sky. All that's left is white, a moving, breathing white that muffles everything. Even my heartbeat feels quieter here. The air is damp, cold against my cheeks. Each breath leaves a trail that mixes with the fog until I can't tell where I end and it begins. For a while, I walk, one slow step at a time. My boots sink slightly into the soft earth, and the silence stretches wider. Then I feel it. That pull. The one I've come to recognize. A presence. Watching. Waiting. The mist thickens ahead, rippling like something just moved through it. A slow shift, a stirring, and then eyes, dozens of them, small glints at first, like droplets catching light. But there's no light here. No moon, no stars, they blink. All at once, my body freezes. The air feels heavier, pressing against my chest. Each set of eyes hangs motionless in the fog, close enough that I can see the faintest reflections in them, like wet glass, like pupils too large to belong to anything human. They don't move. They just watch. I try to count them. 1, 2, 5. Then more appear between the trees, closer, lower to the ground. Every time I blink, the number changes. 8, 14, 10, 17, always shifting. My breath comes shallow now. Every inhale feels too loud, too sharp against the quiet. I take a step back. The eyes move too, perfectly in time, not following. Mirroring. When I stop, they stop. When I turn my head, the ones on the edge vanish, then reappear in the direction I face, as if they only exist when I look at them. The fog hums faintly. a vibration against my ears almost beneath sound. It builds slowly, like something whispering from a great distance through water. I close my eyes for a moment. The hum deepens. It moves under my skin, a soft resonance that makes every nerve feel awake. When I open them again, the eyes are closer. Their glow is dull, a muted silver that pulses once every few seconds, like they're breathing. I whisper to myself. A name. A prayer, I'm not sure which. The mist reacts. A slow roll of movement sweeps around me, curling through the air like a living thing, and the eyes blink, all together again in perfect rhythm. It's not random. It's synchronized. A quiet pattern, like heartbeat and breath combined. I try to count once more, just to anchor myself, to make sense of it. But this time there are too many. The forest isn't there anymore. Just the mist. Just the eyes, surrounding, endless. The hum builds again, low and steady. It vibrates through my bones. It feels almost melodic, like they're speaking. Not in words, but in tone. My vision flickers at the edges. A cold pressure touches the back of my neck. It's not wind. It's not air. It's intent. I don't move. I can't. The eyes blink once more, slower this time. One long, collective breath, and then they begin to fade, one by one. The light inside them dimming until only a few remain. Scattered like embers dying in fog. The hum lowers with them, sliding into silence. The mist settles again, soft, innocent. Like nothing happened. I'm alone, but the quiet feels wrong now. It presses too close, like it's holding its breath. I start walking again, just to hear something. Anything. My boots sink into the damp path, leaving faint prints behind. For a moment I think I've escaped, that the eyes are gone, then a head in the mist, a flicker, two small points of light, blinking. And when I look down, I realize there are footprints beside mine, fresh, matching my pace. The mist hums again, barely audible, almost kind, almost curious. I keep walking, slowly, carefully. The eyes don't disappear this time. They follow, from the fog, from the quiet, from every direction I dare not turn toward, and in that endless pale stillness, I finally understand. The mist was never empty. It was waiting, watching, counting me back. It was almost dark when I heard it. The woods had gone still, the kind of stillness that feels like the world is waiting. Even the air seemed to pause between breaths, and then it spoke my name, soft, drawn out, floating through the trees like a sigh. At first I thought it was just the wind, the way it moves between the branches, making strange shapes out of air. But the sound came again, clearer, gentler. My name. It came from somewhere far ahead, deep in the trees where the mist was beginning to settle. I stood there for a long time, trying to remember if anyone else had followed me out here, but I knew they hadn't. I was alone. I called back, quietly, careful not to let my voice shake. The echo came slower than I expected, like the forest was swallowing the sound before returning it. And then, from somewhere closer, the voice answered. My name again. The same tone, but this time, not mine. It sounded like me, but older, hollow. My chest tightened. I turned toward the direction it came from, my flashlight trembling slightly in my hand. The beam caught the edge of a tree trunk, wet bark, a thin shimmer of dew. Then more fog rolled in, soft and gray, erasing everything it touched. I stepped forward anyway. Each footfall sank into the damp soil, leaving faint impressions that disappeared behind me as if the ground refused to remember I'd been there. Who's there? The question barely left my mouth before the air answered. My name again. Closer now, almost beside me. I froze. It didn't echo this time. It just existed, as if the sound had been waiting right next to my ear. My skin prickled. I turned slowly, the light trembling across the empty path. Nothing. Only trees and the soft drip of moisture falling from their branches. I whispered my name again, testing it. hearing how it felt when I said it aloud. The forest returned it, perfectly, from behind me. Exactly my tone. Exactly my breath. But half a second late, I wanted to move. To run. But my legs felt heavy, as if something had anchored me to the earth. The fog thickened, curling low like smoke. Shapes formed and faded in it. Shadows that weren't quite shadows. Then the voice called again. Not my name this time, just a hum, a low note that vibrated through the air, the sound pressed against my ribs, a deep pulse that didn't belong here. When I took a step forward, the hum followed. When I stopped, it stopped too. I turned back toward the trail. It was gone. The mist had swallowed it whole. My pulse grew louder in my ears, blending with that strange low tone until I couldn't tell which was which. Then, a whisper right behind me. My name. Barely audible, but close. Too close. I spun around, and for a second, the air rippled. It looked like movement, like a shimmer of heat, but cold. Biting cold that reached through my clothes, down to my bones. Something had shaped there. Something unseen but present. The voice came again, soft and steady. Almost kind. It said my name, then added a single word. Come. I don't know why, but my body responded before my mind did. One step forward, then another. The mist parted slightly, revealing a faint light deeper in the woods, a pale glow that pulsed in time with the hum. I moved toward it, slowly, each breath shallow, each heartbeat too loud, but then something changed. The voice called again, but from behind me, and this time it was my own voice, exact, perfect, pleading, don't. I froze between them. The light ahead, the echo behind. For a long time I couldn't move. The mist trembled around me, alive with quiet sound. Then, all at once, everything stopped. The hum, the echo, the voices. Silence fell so fast it rang in my ears. The fog thinned, and I was alone again. Or at least I thought I was, because when I finally whispered my name again, just to prove it was still mine, something else whispered it too, from everywhere at once, and I knew. Whatever had learned to speak like me wasn't done yet. It was waiting. For the next time I called back, the fog returned. Before dawn. It always comes back thicker than before, a pale blanket that swallows the trees and softens every edge of the world. I could barely see the ground beneath my feet. Just outlines, the faint shimmer of wet leaves and the quiet drip of dew from the branches above. Then I saw it, a narrow path, cut clean through the moss and roots. It hadn't been there yesterday. I would have noticed. It ran straight into the fog, thin and pale, like the earth had opened itself just enough to invite me in. For a long time, I just stood there watching the mist breathe across it. There was something gentle about it, like the path was waiting for me. When I finally stepped onto it, the air shifted, heavier, still. Each footstep sank softly into the damp soil. And something about the sound felt too exact, too measured. The forest echoed me. Each step answered half a breath later. At first, I thought it was just the echo bouncing through the trees, but it wasn't coming from behind. It came from beside me, left, then right, matching me perfectly. Shapes began to move in the fog, faint outlines, tall, thin, like people standing too far away to be real. They swayed when I walked, tilting in rhythm with my pace. When I stopped, they stopped too. My pulse slowed to a hush. Even the wind refused to move. The fog wrapped tighter around me, and every breath I took felt like inhaling through cotton. I whispered something. A question. Maybe, but my voice came back smaller, muffled by the white air. The path narrowed ahead. Roots crawled over it like veins, and pale stones jutted up from the soil. Their surfaces were smooth, almost polished, like they'd been touched 1,000 times. The shapes in the mist leaned closer. Not moving closer, leaning. Their edges blurred, but I could sense faces. Or maybe the idea of faces' eyes without detail, mouths that never opened. Watching me without watching, I should have turned back. I thought about it. But my feet, they kept going. Each step forward felt less like my choice and more like the forest's will. The trees arched above me, bending in toward the path, their branches knotted like fingers. Their bark breathed, a slow expansion, a faint creak with each inhale. Something whispered inside the fog. Not words, more like breath brushing through the leaves. It matched my rhythm, almost musical. One beat for every footstep, and then I realized the shapes weren't just mirroring me. They were dancing with me. Their movements flowed like ripples, timed with mine. When I lifted my hand, one lifted too, its arm long and weightless. I felt an ache behind my eyes, a strange warmth, as if the fog itself was inside me now, pulling the strings. The path curved slightly downhill, into a hollow filled with faint light. The mist glowed there, a dull silver shimmer that made the air hum. The ground pulsed beneath my shoes. Alive somehow, breathing in rhythm with the shapes, I should have been terrified. But instead, I felt wonder. Everything around me was moving in slow, perfect coordination. The trees, the fog, the invisible figures beside me. It felt like I had stepped into something sacred or forbidden. My name formed somewhere in my mind, but I didn't speak it. The air spoke it for me, softly. The sound rippled through the path, through the shapes, through me. It wasn't calling me forward this time. It was recognizing me. The hum deepened, a vibration I could feel under my skin. Every shadow leaned closer, and for a moment, I thought I saw them clearly. Not people, not ghosts, just outlines of motion, made of mist and memory. I reached out, and the nearest shape mirrored the gesture. Our hands never met, but the air between us bent slightly like pressure before a storm. A faint static whispered in my ears. The fog around us shimmered, as though the world itself was trying to remember what it once was. Then, a single breath of wind. The shapes dissolved. The hum faded. I blinked, and the path was gone. Just earth again, uneven, untouched. But the rhythm stayed inside me, a quiet pulse that matched my heartbeat. And when I turned to leave, the fog shifted once more, revealing the faint outline of another path. Further ahead, waiting, and for reasons I can't explain, I knew it would appear again tomorrow. Night had settled heavy over the woods, cold, still, like the world was holding its breath. I carried the lantern close, cupping the glass as if it were alive. The flame inside swayed in thin, trembling arcs, never steady, never calm. The light was weak tonight. Too yellow, too thin. Every few seconds it flickered, not from the wind, not from my movement, but in a strange rhythm. A pulse, almost deliberate. I slowed my steps. The leaves underfoot were soft, damp from fog. Each one gave a faint sigh beneath my boots. The path ahead blurred into pale mist. Shapes of trees leaned in on either side, their branches long and spidery, dripping cold water down my neck. The lantern flickered again, twice, then paused. Then once more, a pattern, too exact to ignore. I tilted my head, watching the shadows it cast stretch and shrink across the ground. They didn't move right. When the flame bent, so did the shadows, but slower. As if something else was controlling their timing, I took a step forward. The shadow followed another step. Another movement, except it wasn't just mine. There was a second one faint beside it. A darker shape hidden inside the first, like a reflection that refused to match me completely. The lantern trembled in my hand. The glass clicked softly against the metal frame. I breathed out and watched the mist curl around the flame, like invisible fingers testing its warmth. The light pulsed again. 3 quick flickers, 1 long. 3 short, like a code I didn't understand. I whispered something to the air, a question I can't even remember now. And for a moment I thought the flame answered. It flared bright, so sudden it stung my eyes, then dimmed to nothing but a faint orange thread. The woods around me stretched longer, thinner, as though the light had pulled them apart. The trees bent toward me, not all at once, but slowly, their trunks leaning in as though they were listening. I turned in a slow circle. Everywhere the shadows shifted with me, all but one. One stayed still. It stood at the edge of the path, rooted to the same spot even as I moved the lantern back and forth. Its outline was mine, same shoulders, same tilt of the head. But when I lifted my hand, it didn't. It just watched. Or waited. The flame inside the lantern quivered harder now. Its light pulsed like a heartbeat, too fast, too alive. The shadow's edges rippled with each flicker. It looked as if it were breathing. A low hum crept through the air. Not from the lantern, not from me. Just the space between things. I felt it under my ribs, soft and steady, like the world whispering through my bones. The lantern flickered again. Long, short, short, long. The same strange pattern, repeating. I knelt down, holding it closer to the ground. The flame inside tilted toward the dirt, stretching light into long, broken shapes. The second shadow bent down, too, but not quite in sync. Its movements lagged, half a second behind mine. It reached toward me. Or maybe I reached toward it. For a heartbeat, our outlines touched. The flame flared white. Heat kissed my hand, sharp, almost electric. I jerked back, and the lantern steadied. When my eyes adjusted again, the other shadow was gone. Only mine remained, thin and shaking. The trees had straightened again. The fog hung heavier now, like a curtain closing in slow motion. I wanted to leave, but something in me hesitated, a quiet pull I couldn't explain. The flame flickered one last time. 2 short flashes, then stillness. The forest fell completely silent. Even the wind forgot how to move. I stood there for a long time, listening to the emptiness press against my ears. Then, a faint echo, footsteps, soft, deliberate, matching my rhythm perfectly. But when I turned, nothing. Only mist. I lifted the lantern higher. Its light caught something at the base of a nearby tree, a mark drawn into the bark. It looked like a flame. Tilted sideways, half burned. I stared until the lantern flickered again. Just once. Then again. As if it were breathing. As if something inside it was deciding when to glow. The shadows began to bend once more. Quietly. Slowly. In patterns I couldn't follow. And for the first time, I wondered if the light was truly mine to carry, or if I had been the one following it all along. The air was sharper that night, cold enough to taste. Every breath hung in front of me like smoke, pale and trembling. The forest had gone quiet hours ago. No birds, no rustle of leaves, only the faint creak of frozen branches shifting in the dark. I followed the path until it ended at a slope of silver moss. Beyond it, a narrow stream, black as ink. It hadn't been here before. I would have remembered. The surface didn't move. No ripple, no reflection of stars. Just stillness, thick and heavy like glass poured from shadow. I stepped closer. The ground beneath my boots gave a faint crack, frost breaking under the weight of my curiosity. My lantern's light stopped at the edge of the stream. It wouldn't cross. The darkness on the water swallowed it completely, like it refused to be seen. I crouched down. The air above the stream was colder, a sharp chill that stung my skin, yet felt alive. I leaned closer. That's when I saw it, a face, not mine, not anyone I knew. It stared up from the water, eyes wide and hollow, lips barely moving. I blinked, and it changed. Another face, then another. They drifted across the black surface, soft and silent, like ghosts caught in glass. Each one whispered something. Not words I could understand, just fragments, half-breaths of thought. The stream seemed to breathe with them, a faint mist curling up in rhythm, as if the air itself was exhaling their secrets. I whispered back, though I didn't mean to. The sound escaped without permission. A quiet hello, barely a breath. The faces turned toward me. All at once. The water didn't move, but the faces did. Sliding closer to where I knelt, their mouths opening just enough to let a whisper spill out. It felt like they were speaking inside me. Behind my ears, under my skin. Each breath I took came slower, heavier. The cold began to spread up my arms into my chest. I tried to stand, but the earth beneath me held fast, soft at first, then firm, like something underneath had taken hold. My lantern flickered, its flame shrinking to a single trembling spark, and in that dim glow, I saw the water more clearly. The stream wasn't frozen at all. It only looked that way. It was moving, just impossibly slow. The kind of motion only seen when you stop breathing long enough to notice. I leaned closer again, drawn toward it. The faces beneath the surface shifted like reflections on warped glass. Some smiled, some wept. One looked exactly like me. I froze. It blinked, slowly, once, and its lips moved. The whisper that followed came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Stay! The word brushed against the back of my neck like a hand I couldn't see. The flame in the lantern steadied, then dimmed again. The reflection of myself began to ripple, even though the water stayed still. My features stretched, thinned, and for a brief second, I saw my own mouth curve into a smile I didn't feel. I stumbled back, boots sliding in the frost, heart pounding in my throat. The whispering grew louder, but not in sound, but in presence. Like 1,000 thoughts pressing against the air, pleading to be remembered. Then, silence. The faces faded one by one, sinking into the black. The surface smoothed. Still again, only my reflection remained. But I couldn't make myself look into its eyes. I turned away. The forest felt different now, colder, as if something in the stream had followed me, stretching out through the mist. Each step away echoed softly, like the ground was remembering me. When I glanced back once more, the stream looked frozen again, perfectly still, perfectly harmless. But I could still feel it breathing, somewhere beneath that glassy dark. The faces waited, their whispers tangled together, shaping something that almost sounded like my name. I kept walking until the sound, whatever it was, fell behind the trees. And yet, when I closed my eyes, I could still see the reflection staring back, smiling, patient, waiting for the next time I dared to look down. The woods were quieter than I'd ever known them. Even the frost seemed to hold its breath. I followed the narrow trail until the trees thinned, and there it was, another cabin, older, leaning slightly, as if time had been pushing against it for too long. The walls were gray with age, the roof bent under years of snow and rain. One window was cracked, the other fogged from the inside. No smoke, no tracks, no reason for it to be here at all. Yet, I felt pulled toward it. Each step closer sank softly into damp leaves. The air around the cabin was still, so still it pressed against my ears, a silence so thick it almost hummed. When I reached the door, I could see the faint marks of fingers in the dust on the handle. Not recent, but not ancient either. I pushed it open. The hinge didn't creak. It should have, but it didn't. The door swung inward with a soundless ease that made my chest tighten. Inside, the air was cold and heavy, the kind that settles deep in your lungs and refuses to leave. Dust floated in thin, pale ribbons of light spilling from the cracked window. The floorboards were warped, soft in places, sticky with something I didn't want to name. There was almost nothing inside. A table, a small iron stove, and a single wooden chair in the center of the room. It rocked slowly, back and forth. Back and forth. But there was no wind, no movement, not even the faintest draft. I froze. The silence grew heavier, layered like a blanket I couldn't shake off. I watched the chair. It kept moving, slow and patient, like someone had just stood up and forgotten to stop it. I whispered, though I don't remember what I said. Maybe a question. Maybe my own name. My voice didn't sound right in that place. It felt smaller, swallowed. Something about the cabin seemed wrong in shape. The corners were darker than they should be, as if the light didn't know how to reach them. The rocking slowed, then stopped. I waited, but nothing happened. Not at first. Then I noticed a faint impression on the chair's seat. The wood bent just slightly, like it still held the memory of weight. A trace of warmth clung to the air, too human to be old. The lantern in my hand flickered once, and for a split second, I thought I saw a figure sitting there, hazy, outlined by dust and light. But when the flame steadied, the chair was empty again. My breath felt too loud. Every inhale scraped against the silence. The stillness began to pulse, a slow rhythm I could feel in my chest and at the base of my skull. Something shifted in the far corner. I turned my lantern toward it, but the light dimmed as if something inside the room resisted it. The shadow on the wall didn't match mine. It was taller, thinner, and it didn't move when I did. My mouth went dry. I took a step back, and the floor groaned softly under my heel, the only sound in the room. The chair began to rock again, this time slowly forward. Then back, forward, then back, and with each motion the air seemed to tighten, pressing closer, as if the walls were breathing in. I couldn't look away. The chair kept moving even though nothing touched it. The lantern flickered again. The shadow grew darker, and I could almost hear something behind the silence, not a voice, but the shape of one, a whisper trying to form, a breath waiting to become a sound. I took another step toward the door, but the boards beneath me sighed, a low, trembling sound, almost pleading. When I reached the threshold, the chair stopped again, completely still. I turned once more just to be sure. The air shimmered above it, a faint distortion. Like heat over stone, it leaned slightly forward, as if listening. I didn't stay to find out what it wanted. Outside, the forest felt different. The wind had returned, but it didn't sound right. It whispered through the branches in a voice too slow to understand. When I looked back, the cabin was silent again. No movement, no sound, but I knew. If I opened that door again, the chair would still be rocking, waiting, patient, and never truly alone. The air felt heavier tonight, damp, thick, and sweet with the smell of moss and fading rain. I found the trail again, the same one I'd walked so many times before. The narrow path curved between the trees, its soil dark, soft under my boots. It should have led home. The forest was quiet. Even the insects had gone still. Only the faint hush of fog moving through branches broke the silence. I took a step forward, then another. Each one felt quieter than the last. The trees stood close, their bark slick and black with moisture. Thin vines brushed against my sleeve like pale fingers reaching. I knew this place. I recognized the crooked birch by the bend, the hollow stump beside the stream bed. But everything looked softer, blurred, as if I was walking through a memory instead of the world itself. When I looked back, the path was gone. Just gone. The footprints I'd left melted into the soil, swallowed by the mist creeping low to the ground. The trail behind me had dissolved into nothing, only gray fog and the faint outline of trees that weren't there a moment ago. My chest tightened. I turned around slowly, tried to find the right direction, but every side looked the same. Fog and trees, an endless folding of shadows and pale light. I whispered my own name once. It barely reached my lips. The fog pressed closer, so thick I could taste it, moist, metallic. Like old water left in a rusted bowl, I kept walking. Maybe forward, maybe not. The trail shifted beneath my feet, mud turning to leaves, then to nothing at all. Each step felt lighter, as though the ground itself was fading. The air began to hum. A soft vibration beneath the silence, steady and deep like something breathing just out of sight. I wanted to stop, but stopping felt worse, like the forest was waiting for that. The fog curled around my legs, slow and deliberate. I could barely see my hands anymore. I reached out, expecting to touch a tree, something solid, but my fingers met only air.